They said if we shut down the federal government for 35 days, a lot of Americans would be hurt and disappointed. Turns out they were right, and those Americans are mostly economists. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, the data is out for the first quarter, and for the first time since 2015, first quarter GDP is up above 3%, 3.2% actually. Economists had been calling for 2.5%. And so things didn't pan out the way they thought it would. And this is in the wake of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, some 35 days between late December and January 25th. This in the wake of a recent show that we did about how employment numbers are solid and unemployment numbers are low. Bill, what is the zeitgeist of the economy right now telling you about the president's prospects in 2020?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. As far as the connection, we know that correlation does not necessarily mean a causality.
Yes.
And having one data point where the government was shut down for 30 days and the economy just boomed is just a data point that's not even a line, let alone a trend. So I say, in the interest of science, we shut down the government for 6 months.
Just try to confirm the test.
Maybe 2 years. The longer the baseline, the more accurate the information becomes, Scotty. So if we were to shut the government down for, let's say, 2 years or so, I think we would then be able to make a pretty strong case for causality, which I happen to believe is in fact there. But, we have to be honest about these things, right? As always, America prospering, Democrats hardest hit.
Well, among the data points in this latest survey for the first quarter of 2019 are the fact that exports rose some 3.7% in the first quarter, while imports decreased by the same amount. And so net trade is improving or evening out at the very least. I know some people are going to point to that immediately and say that the president's protectionist approach to international trade agreements was the cause of that. Do you tend to believe that, or is this a blip?
No, I think that's probably it. And certainly some of the policies regarding tax code have brought some manufacturing jobs back to the United States that were not profitable before, at least on the world market. I do want to say something about tariffs and all this other stuff, because we've touched on this before, and I just want to be really clear about this. Needless to say, I believe in free trade, and needless to say, I think free trade benefits everybody to the highest degree possible. But we have not been engaged in fair trade with some of our major trading partners, China. And so if you retaliate against them with tariffs and it moves them towards treating you fairly enough so that you can actually have free trade, then tariffs are a free trade win in that particular instance. An entire across-the-board set of tariffs just in order to protect our own industries is catastrophic, as we saw from just in numerous cases, but mostly during the Depression. But retributive tariffs that are aimed at partners who are not playing as fair as maybe they could actually seems to be having a positive effect. Imagine that.
Well, there was a price increase. Overall prices went up by 0.8%, 0.8%. And if you exclude food and energy, it was a 1.3% increase. However, disposable personal income increased in the first quarter by 3%.
Oh, that's a bigger number.
Isn't it ultimately the pocketbook that determines the elections?
You betcha.
Is there anything that the Democratic Party or President Trump's opponents are going to be able to say to counter this kind of economic news coming out of their own beloved federal government?
Impeach the man who put more money in your wallet and more jobs into the family. For God's sakes, get rid of him. That's the message I would run if I'm the Democratic Party. That's the message that they are running. Every time we get an episode of good economic news, it's not just good economic news. It's an extension of a period of good economic times. And the longer those economic times continue, the more people will be able to say, well, we elected this guy in 2016, and if you're a moderate or something, I sure didn't vote for the guy. I thought he was a jackass. But now that my taxes are lower and my income is higher and my disposable income especially is significantly higher. And I do remember the Obama years with the 8 years of promised recovery summer that actually only arrived just shortly after Donald Trump cut the taxes. That's when the Obama recovery finally kicked in. There comes a point where the election becomes so I don't want to say winnable, because it gives you this awful sense of overconfidence, which is not anything I want to either fall victim to myself or generate. But it is the economy, stupid. And if you've got all of the advantages of an incumbent and a strong economy besides, and your opponent is on the reefs in terms of can't decide whether they want to sink to the left or sink straight down the middle, this is yet another nail in the coffin of the Democratic Party. And now the question will be, I think, let's just play it out. I mean, just for the fun of it, if they lose this election in 2020 and they lose it big enough so that we recover the House, nobody knows what's going to happen. I'm not pretending to know. I'm just saying here's one of many outcomes that is possible. Then you have to ask yourself whether the Democratic Party will be able to survive the split between those people who want to take it straight into socialism and are making an awful lot of noise about taking the Democratic Party straight to socialism, or whether they want to return to being the party of the little guy. I still think that they're completely destructive, but nevertheless, they're at least an American political party that has a different view of America's prosperity, but they have America's best interests in heart. I don't know, but right now, things are looking good. And if Donald Trump were to slip down a flight of stairs, especially if Hillary Clinton had been in the room just a few minutes earlier, then what you would get is Mike Pence. And Mike Pence is not going to be overturning any of these economic benefits. So for the entire 8 years of the Obama presidency, starting at least 2 years into it, very, very early, with this anemic economic growth, I kept saying every year that the American economy is like this coiled spring that's just more and more compressed, and there's more and more potential growth, so much growth that wants to be there, but couldn't be there because if you run a company and Barack Obama decides to use his phone and his pen, and now all of a sudden he's put this healthcare onus on a small business owner, and they realize, my God, this is such an important concept. It's even easier for businessmen to succeed if they know for sure that there's going to be high taxes so that they can plan for it. But when you never know what is going to happen, there's no sensible option other than to just keep your cards close to your vest. Don't invest in anything new. Build up a war chest and be prepared to ride out some bad times. Now, when you've got that mindset from 8 years of Obama's regulations and the growth of the whole EPA monstrosity and so on, and then all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, no, actually your cost of doing business is not only not going to go up, but it's going to go down. Now, after 2 or 3 years of looking around and saying, wait a minute, you're going to pull the rug out from under this? And actually, no. People start spending more money, and then they start spending more money. They start making more money. They start hiring more people. Those people start making more money. The country becomes richer. The country becomes happier. The country becomes more individually self-sufficient. Individual outcomes improve for individual Americans rather than group outcomes improving for the party that wants to divide the country into all these little tribes. And again, America doing well, economy booming, defense strong, unemployment low, Democrats hardest hit.
Bill, it seems to me that if I were in charge of messaging at the Republican Party, I'd start doing advertising right now without any explicit reference to the election at all, and just run a series of commercials, 1 or 2 every night, that people would see that would show the personal stories of individuals whose lives have improved over the past 3 or 4 years. And exactly. That unemployed people who are now employed, people of all colors and, both or all 17 genders, all of that stuff. Just run those commercials and just at the end, just say America winning.
And yeah, and getting greater. And it's funny you mention that because I was, I'd had some some ideas and some chances in preliminary phases to work on a political campaign back in 2016. And what I would do is exactly what you said, except I would make this even simpler. I would have a homeowner standing in front of his home, and I would have him holding a bar, just a piece of cardboard paper, the kind of thing that you would make for a science fair project. And I'd have a little thing here that said value of my home in 2015, 192,000. Value of my home in 2020, here, just red, green, boom, and just all across the board, and just have people hold up a pie chart or whatever they want to use, so that the thing becomes silent. It's not coming through the cortex. It's not a head argument. It's not a listen to this argument. It's a I see it, I feel it. They happy. Look at there's what we were making. Here's what we are making now. And that kind of really homemade looking thing that was no gloss, no production values, essentially just basically shoot it on an iPhone, make people make their own diagrams and shoot a bunch of them. And yeah, I think that kind of thing would be very effective.
Now, earlier in the episode, you expressed somewhat facetiously that maybe the government shutdown aided the economic increase or the economic GDP growth. It seems to me, Bill, that the Democrats are in between a rock and a hard place on this one, because let's say you posit that part of the reason for the growth was that the government was shut down. Well, then that's good for the Republicans. Let's say you posit just the opposite, that the government shutdown is actually a drag on the economy. Nevertheless, first quarter GDP grew by 3.2%.
See, this is when it's easy to start getting cocky, because now we're looking at, we're late in the third quarter. We got a 4-touchdown lead, and all the people that are doing bragging on the other end of the sidelines are talking about, changing their defensive coach. The scoreboard is the scoreboard. I mean, that's the score, and that is by far the single most compelling determinant in how people vote. And I think the thing that I would point out about the government shutdown is simply this. I would add exactly what you said, because it's a very nice twist, but basically I would say this. The Democrats have told you for your entire lives that the government is the source of prosperity. We've been telling you that the government is the source of removing prosperity, that a small government that would fit into the box that originally came in would be wonderful and enforce the law, and that's it, but that the more massive the government becomes, the less money and the less freedom you have. Now, if they're right, if the Democrats are right, then shutting down the government, the font of all financial goodness, should have caused a significant drop in the GDP. But what we got was a bump. Now, the bump doesn't mean that the bump was due to the government shutdown, but I think you can make a pretty good case that if your entire argument is that prosperity comes from the government and the government shuts down and the economy goes up, that pretty much blows that theory right out of the water.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, 5 days a week, Bill Whittle brings you his analysis of the breaking news of the day. And this story came out on Friday, Bill. It seems like an odd time to dump good economic news. But the Trump administration apparently, at least this bureau in the Trump administration, was not finally attuned to when is a good time to release the news.
Yeah, either that or you've now got, to stretch the football analogy, now you've got, look, I've just seen this so many times in football games, and I'm bringing it up not because football is automatically politics, but because some of the psychological factors work pretty much identically because it's a competition. Sometimes a team will get a significant lead, and if they get the significant lead, they loosen up and they become even better. Because they've been so dominant, now they can just really relax and really play the game loose, and then their lead just increases and increases and increases. More often, what you see is a team with a significant lead now says, well, my God, we've got a 4-touchdown lead, and all we have to do is just run the clock out, just protect it. And I've seen more times than I can count, just watching teams go from a 4-touchdown lead to a 3-touchdown lead to a 2-touchdown lead to a 1-touchdown lead to an even game, and then they lose by a field goal because they decided that because the offense that they had been playing in the beginning that worked so well for them, now they're just suddenly trying to conserve this and hold on to it. So if Donald Trump and I think we can reasonably assume that all of the people associated with the president, when you take into account the entire presidential staff, I think we can reasonably assume that somebody in that loop knows that a Friday afternoon dump is where you put bad news. And what I'm saying is, if you put good news in a Friday afternoon dump, you must be feeling pretty good about things.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're feeling pretty good about the members at BillWhittle.com who have made this program possible. This and 43 other shows every month that they enjoy at the member exclusive website, including a member-written blog, which has become actually one of the most dynamic and exciting parts of the site.
Absolutely.
We invite you to become part of their ranks by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that Become a Member link. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can click the little notification bell, and you're getting to see some videos, but you're not really getting to participate in the team that makes it happen. And this fellowship of reasoned inquiry, this league of mutual encouragement,
this band of brothers.
This band of brothers.
We happy few, and I'm not joking either.
No, and one of the things I love about it is the sharing of stuff on the blog at BillWhittle.com, well beyond politics,
Right.
into culture and music and humor and
engineering,
personal,
space flight, all kinds of great. Yeah.
Yes, really. I find it, and I'm not a big blog reader. I find that I really enjoy checking this blog on a daily basis, and we hope you'll join us too for that. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.